Hi, it's not often that I have the luxury of talk to people that are really at the top leading a sport, and very often because we're kind of in different realms. So in this case, it's a bit different because the person I'm introducing soon is someone that has been involved in sport, but also in technology, in innovation, in investing, and easy to say, it's Andrea Gaudenzi, the current chairman of ATP. Ciao, Andrea.
Ciao Carlo, thank you for having me.
So can I say congrats for another cycle?
Thank you very much.
I know it won't be holidays because you're always super busy and you're trying to change things, which is one of the reasons that I really like talking to you. And through the years, we had some random and deep conversation, and I always took things and that I use in in what I'm doing every day. You also have been a player for many years. I think you stopped 20, and I don't want to talk too much about tennis because it's not what I'm expert in, if I'm expert in anything. 20 years ago, you stopped playing, correct?
Yes, I
2000?
stopped in 2003, exactly, when I was
Yeah.
30 years old. Correct.
Wow. So now, and then you've been an investor, an entrepreneur, in general, an innovator. Can we mention the little startup in Italy that did amazing things that I'm using every day, but I was also with my family?
Yes, I basically for 15, 20 years have been completely outside of tennis. I've never stopped being a tennis fan, meaning I always continue to watch tennis on TV, digital, obviously, and this is a little bit where my frustration came, obviously, in being an avid tennis fan, but I could see things improved and I saw the opportunity. But long story short, my post career has been in different sectors, from gaming, from startup to large companies. The company you mentioned is Music Match, which is having a great success. We basically work in the metadata space in the music industry, providing the lyrics to the main players like Apple Music, Amazon, Spotify, etc. But we do a lot more than that. Also, we did the manage the admin royalty and a lot of stuff, basically with the main goal of enhancing the music experience, which I think it's got to a pretty good level. If I'm a subscriber of all these services. I really enjoy music, one-stop shop, sort of all the catalog. Now Spotify has added a lot of podcasts, etc. But if I compare the music experience today to what it used to be 20, 30 years ago, when we were always struggling with CDs and players, it's a lot better. So I've had a good run. I also had other startups in the financial services and all of that things. And then I got closer to tennis a little bit through ATP Media as a non-executive board member. And again, spotted this massive opportunity that I see in our sport. And yeah, and almost as a coincidence, I took the opportunity of becoming the chairman of the ATP in 2020. Started, 2 months before COVID hit during the bushfires in Australia. So it's been really a difficult period to manage, but overall proud of what we've done the last 2.5 years, because we managed to actually pass a lot of reforms and changes within ATP, which is basically the phase one of our OneVision strategy during a very, very difficult period of disruption, right? And where everybody who had a very difficult time, players with a 50% cut in prize money, bubbles. I mean, we were in a survival mode, in crisis mode. Nevertheless, we did massive changes to prepare for the future.
Because the announcement of OneVision was what, mid-20, I don't remember. You announced it?
Yeah, I basically presented it to the board before being elected, a very short summary.
Okay.
I mean, the concept was there. They really liked the idea. And then we divided in two phases. Phase one with a focus on ATP, a sort of let's get our house in order. And phase two then, related to a closer collaboration with Grand Slams, WTA and ITF. So I think phase one is completed now. We approved it last year, and we did the first year only board consultation, and then we went to all the stakeholder consultation process, negotiation took another year, and we approved it basically in spring, summer last year.
And just for the people that are not completely aware, I think the implementation started January 1st this year.
Yeah,
if I remember well. And what are the main points? As you know, I'm more into the the media and engagement.
I think the core of it is aligning the interest of the partnership between players and tournaments, first of all, which means players having the full visibility and transparency over the financials of the tournaments, and regulating the relationship via a prize money formula, which is basically profit sharing 50-50, right? Okay, there is a base prize money, and then when the tournaments do well, the Masters, there is excess profits, it gets redivided and reallocated to the players. For the past 30 years, the players never had the visibility of the tournament's economic, and prize money was negotiated every year on a percentage increase basis, but always with one side on the dark side, which is a difficult, negotiation to have, and it creates a lot of, mistrust and a lot of internal conflicts that I always felt were unnecessary in occupying 80-90% of the energies, resources, and time within the organization. It's almost like saying you have a partner in a business and you give him $100 at the end of the year, and he's asking you, okay, how much money have you made? And you tell them, look, this is none of your business. So obviously that relationship will have issues in the long term. So that is done, and it's great. Obviously, the second main pillar is around, expanding, creating a better premium product. So we have expanded 5 of our masters. This year we have expanded Madrid, Rome, and Shanghai, and in 25 also Canada and Cincinnati, with a concept of, the fans want to see the best players in the world playing in the best arenas. So obviously the Grand Slams and the Masters, and obviously the ATP final and WTA finals, are those events where the top players have commitment. It's mandatory to play. So this is definitely the most attractive events that we have in our sport. And I think it's key to simplify, or at least to try to simplify the story to the fans, because they love to see these events, these top players playing against each other. And we are lucky because we have many days of that content that obviously can be very, very valuable for broadcasters, and which is obviously what we're going to talk about in this session. So as a consequence of aligning the interest, prize money formula with transparency, enhancing the premium product, the Masters, and then obviously the other piece was media aggregation. We aggregated the rights of the 250 and 500 into ATP Media with equity. So now we have one, stop shop in a sort of a commercial entity. We've also created TennisData Innovation, where we pulled all our data and streaming rights for the betting market. We've gone to market with an RFP and was very successful. And last but not least, the governance review. We've done an extensive governance review, which is basically the core of how an organization makes decisions. So in terms of, we removed conflict of interest, we've set allocated new position in the board, so everybody has a seat at the table, and many, many other things. So all in all, obviously time will tell, but so far happy and proud of what we have achieved.
No, and I also, the TDI thing, is it mostly managing rights, or it also has an input in your technology use? Is also operational?
It's creating a center of excellence within mind, obviously, always the consumer experience, right? So it's not only about collecting the data and then with a feed selling it and providing it to the operator. We're also working in new experiences to that data. By the way, the data can be used also for coaching purposes for the players. It can be used for overlay graphics on TV for the broadcast. Data in itself can help enhance the fan experience. It's very interesting. There's a lot of statistics around that. So it's a bit everything. It's about having a team focused 100% in that. Obviously, the core market they're serving at the moment is the betting streaming market, which is necessary to have the data in order to have those transactions. But it's long term, it's going to be a lot more than that.
And I remember I was at a lunch with one of the people leading the data side of things. And there is obviously, all my career has been started with, sports data and stuff, but it's so much sophistication in what you're doing that is impressive. I was really impressed about, the sophistication, how you manage the streams, etc. And I think it makes a lot of sense to put all the data aspects in one place. So you have people experts in that with others that help selling the rights, etc. But this becomes, I think, it's the way you have continuous innovation, because there's someone that basically every day have to think about, okay, we have to manage it, but we have to create something new. We have to create additional value and so on. I think it seems on paper and even in practice, it seems a good idea.
Yeah, it is challenging for every sport. I mean, it is challenging for every organization to continuously innovate and balance the struggle that you have on the market. We have our issues, like on the product governance side, on the discussions we have on calendar, on rules, on ranking, and this is all related to the product. But then you should not forget, and this is what I really believe in, but what is going to happen in 15, 20, 30 years? Where are we going? Otherwise, you get stuck, head down in the weeds, and you always focus about next year. Everything is going fairly well, but you don't realize that slowly you might be losing fans or actually market share out there, because the world is changing, and it's changing a lot faster than it used to be. So this is the challenge nowadays for really any business, but for also particularly for a sport property that have never been used to compete in a marketplace, which is ultimately the entertainment industry, where now we have a lot of tech media giants, compared to the past, that they are used to manage innovation and technology
and
in
data.
a very good way. And data, exactly. They're almost all data driven in a way.
No, I think this tension between short term and long term, as I'm in a new phase since February. I reflect a lot about short term. I'm more of a long term guy, which is an easy way to escape maybe accountability at some point. But very often you see the damage when short term misleads. Sometimes you have to do it. I mean, if you're in a company, but I think balancing the two, it's a good point. I know phase 2 is now. There's a lot of blah blah blah, which I'm not interested in. What is the ambition of phase 2, especially again for what relates to media, fan engagement, etc.
Yeah, look, phase 2, obviously we're not alone. We're not alone, and we need to design it together with the 4 Grand Slams, WTA and ITF, so with all the tennis stakeholders, right? But in a nutshell, and obviously I cannot go into much details because we're having those discussions now, is we're all part of the same story, right? As a fan, going back to my frustration when I've been 15, 20 years outside of tennis as a fan, you want to watch tennis and you want to watch it all, right? You want to watch men and women tennis, you want to watch the big tournaments, small tournaments. The Grand Slams, of course, are the pinnacle of the sport, the most important tournaments. Then we have the year-end finale with the ATP WTA finals, Davis Cup and Billie Jean King Cup. But that story at the moment is technically written by different stakeholders, which all go about with slightly different strategies. They go to market with different teams. They have different commercial teams. So we have different deals with broadcasters, with data and all of that. So it's about, we're talking to the same people. We cannot really, write different chapter of the same book separately and also sell it in different bookstores, because we create a very painful experience for our consumers. So the very simple idea: how can we get together and work closer together, align in a way that we can offer a better proposition to ultimately what I believe are the essence of our future growth and success, the fans. Because today's fans, they have a lot of opportunities. In my OneVision strategy presentation, I presented a slide of the founder and CEO of Netflix, which basically said, my biggest competitor is Leap, when they asked him about, are you concerned about Apple and Amazon coming into the space of Netflix? And he said, no, I'm actually concerned with any form of entertainment that occupies the time and attention and wallet ultimately of consumers, and they sleep a lot. So that's it. It was a way of saying competition is a lot broader than we think. Therefore, and today people have a lot of options. I see my kids, how they engage with gaming platforms, and it's going to be difficult for sport properties, even entertainment properties, actually, to engage the younger generation. So, in a nutshell, is we live in a very competitive environment, which will get even more competitive. The opportunity in terms of potential of addressable market is growing because there is more people in the world. We have higher internet penetration. The technology, the devices allow you to consume content a lot easier. It's more accessible than it used to be. So the addressable market will grow, but the competition will grow. So get together, try to become stronger. And it's also a question of investments and economies of scales and synergies, right? All these tech platforms are expensive, and we don't have the scale individually, each one of us. So if we get together, we can actually you know, the MLB, what they have done with BAMTech and building their first OTT platform, which they then sold to Disney. We don't have that type of scale at the moment individually. There's 6 or 7 of us alone, but together we can definitely do that.
But you know that if you remember that the aggregation, the centralization of digital platforms, especially in a case like yours, when you have tournaments that are basically working 24/7 for a year, but live 1 month more or less with, you know, ticketing and everything. I think there is a lot of synergy that you can create there, and that kind of my strategic obsession of the last few years. In the past, I worked with the NFL, for example, to centralize. But American sports are born centralized. Yeah. Everything else is a bit less. And so I think that there are, if you want to cross the pond, there are good things about the American system for leagues, etc. There are good things about European, but learning from each other, it normally, I mean, there are a lot of lessons learned that you can take from the US, because there are certain things that are best centralized. There are certain things that maybe are better in a different way. Going to streaming, I remember an interview like some months before you became the chairman the first time, 2019, where you were saying, tennis is born for digital, streaming is the right solution, because obviously tennis has a lot of content almost every day, kind of, right? If you put everything together. And so have you changed your mind, or you still think streaming?
No. It's to me 100% part of the opportunity that we have. You know, obviously in the linear world, tennis, you know, has the massive issue that we have is that we don't know how long a game is. You don't know who's playing until the day before. So from a broadcast perspective, if you're linear and you need to plan, it's difficult. I mean, I remember many matches that had to move channel because the news was coming at 8 o'clock back in the 90s, right? So we have a lot of content. We have a lot of content all around the world in different time zones. We have a very strong women product. So you know, the WTA and women's tennis is probably the strongest women's sport. So we have this also variety in the fans, because our audience is also 50-50 men and women, which I think is a massive value compared to other sports, which are mostly, you know, skewed towards male. And we're global, so we're all around the world. So lots of content, many hours, all time zone, men and women. I think we're in a very, very good place for the evolution, or call it revolution, or how content will be distributed in the next 10 to 15 years, mostly via digital platform.
And I think, by the way, we didn't plan this, but it's Wimbledon week. And I just saw news that Discovery Plus is saying they're showing all matches, which at least for me is like, yeah, exactly. So I started working in streaming in 2008 with NBC Olympics in New York. And we immediately saw, okay, forget channels, forget linear. The challenge is then you need to create the discovery of content. So there are other challenges in streaming, but clearly that's you should be able to serve fans in a way that they can watch whatever they need on whatever platform. This is, I mean, kind of old news now. But I think it still takes times, because sometimes the money is somewhere else, etc., etc. But if you look at, sorry, go on, Andrea.
No, go ahead. I was just saying, I agree with you. There are challenges. The transition won't be simple, won't be easy, but it creates massive opportunity, because the fans they're all different. You can take tennis fans like any other sport or any other industry. You probably have a scale of 10 different type of fans: an avid fan, people who watch only the big matches, the final in the Grand Slam. Some other people, they really watch small tournaments. Some other, they follow their local heroes. And the ability of digital is that it can give you a very, very personalized experience, right? You could be watching somebody on court 15 at 10 a.m. if you want to, but you can still obviously watch the core matches, or have, you know, just focus on the summary of the highlights, pre-match, post-match. Also, I think we're going in a direction where the offline, the non-live content becomes a lot more important and valuable to help, you know, provide more context to the fan and storytelling, which is what we have done with the Netflix series now. You know, F1 was the first one doing that, golf and tennis following. But fans want to see more than just the live competition. They also, it's about storytelling ultimately, right? Entertainment. So if you can tell a beautiful story around it and get them closer to our athletes, to our personality, they're obviously going to enjoy more the live match. So it's definitely more challenging because it's more complex, but all in all, all of us could be capable of providing a much, entertaining and fulfilling experience to each fan, and because they're all different and they likely require a very personalized one.
So you were saying entertainment, and obviously the Netflix series is the first thing that come to mind. What was your experience with that? Because we have seen it, we see people commenting, but how was ATP involved? I was working with Netflix. What do you see the future of this evolving?
First of all, it was the part that I really appreciated is how we got it together is a closer collaboration with the 4 Grand Slams and the WTA, right? Because it's probably the first one of a kind that we do a deal that all of us get together as one to have a counterpart, and with Netflix and Box to Box, which are the same producer of Drive to Survive, Formula One. So that was nice. It was, everybody jumped in, they saw the opportunity, they understood the value of engaging our fans with more non-live content. So that in itself, I think, was a success. It was a lot easier for Formula One to do a deal with Netflix. For us, we have to agree, all of us, to do one, which is always more complex. Is part of the struggle of our fragmentation. And then, ultimately, you hand over the editorial and the story to the experts. And we've helped, of course, in terms of providing players and guiding a little bit. But I've just watched the second part of season 1 last week, and I'm really pleased. I like it. And I think it's going to get better and better. The same way as I felt Drive to Survive season 2, 3, and 4 were better than the first one. And hopefully we continue many, many more.
Yeah, and you've seen in football, there were other cases where take the Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney, the 2 Hollywood stars, buying a club, 5th level club, which gets promoted, lucky, Wrexham FC. And basically the deal was as much as about the club, about the series that we were able to produce. And the money came more from the series. So there is clearly contamination between traditional entertainment and sport. And the question is more, do you think also changing a bit, like others have tried, creating events that are more for entertainment, more from the fans, or do you see tennis going that way, or you kind of keep the product, as you call it, a bit more protected? What is your idea there?
Yeah, that's a very difficult question. Generally, I think sport is entertainment, so it falls already in the category of entertainment. And obviously, there is different forms of entertainment. But what's our mission? Obviously, you want to have somebody to watch a tennis match and enjoy it and forget all the problem and put a smile on people's faces. And also, to a certain extent, what I really love about sport, try to send the right values to the younger generation. I grew up watching tennis, and I think what we stand for are the things that I want my kids to learn and also stand for. And we've got great examples from our athletes. So there is dual role, which is entertainment and, to me, also education, because sport is not only purely entertainment, but is also education. And you can go into wellness and mental health and all of that, which you probably don't get just by watching a movie on Netflix or listening to a song.
Yeah. And so let's go more into innovation. I've seen that in 2025, correct? You introduced the electronic line calling live for all tournaments, correct?
Yes, look, it's was also a difficult decision, because the balance, as you say, the balance between the tradition of the core rule of the sport and how much do we innovate to adapt to the changes, I think is very delicate and is very complex. I always felt that, at least in our world, there's so much to do on how we govern the sport and how we commercialize it, how we go about sales and distribution, and the challenges that we have with our fragmentation, that this is probably, in light of the 80-20 rule, focus on the 20% that deliver 80% of the value. That's what we need to focus first. Because ultimately, we have a billion fans. We have a billion fans around the world that love tennis, but our problem that we struggle with the distribution, so reaching even a greater audience, but mostly engaging properly with that audience, keep them more engaged, because of the struggle I've told you before, finding this chapter of the books in different bookstores. Now, At some point, I'm pretty sure every sport will have to look at alternative formats. They will have to revise the length. Is it too long? Is it too short? What do we do here? I think we all need to be very careful, because I'm big in innovation and change. Don't get me wrong, but it's not a video game. So I worked in video game, and in video gaming, which is a little bit in a way similar. You have to get the right recipe. Once, for example, King got the right recipe for Candy Crush, they're also very, very careful, the game designer, about touching the core of the game mechanics. But you can do a lot of A/B testing, right? You can change, and you have different cohort of fans, and you can go and change the game in, for example, in a small market like Finland. But in tennis, it's more difficult to do this A/B testing. It's not that we can go and change the rules and then 2 months later go back to the previous rules. Plus, you have the players are the actor, they are the product, they're not avatars, right? You can't tell somebody like...
For now.
Yeah, tomorrow, for now, yeah, that's another discussion. You cannot just tell them, okay, tomorrow the court is shorter, the net is high, you only have one serve. It doesn't work that way. I mean, it's years of practice and training according to certain rules. So I'm very, very, very cautious and careful about touching the core of the game mechanics and the product, especially because I strongly believe that we're in a pretty good place. I love tennis the way it is. You might argue I'm biased because I was a tennis player. There's definitely fine-tuning you can do. Like, okay, do we agree that the crowd should move? Should we have more music between the changeover, coaching, that type of things? But the core of the game mechanics, I would be very cautious.
And so you just created a perfect segue for the next thing I wanted to ask you. I don't know if you saw, NVIDIA did a paper on implementing a tennis match with AI, with the player learning different styles. I don't know if you saw that video. And I was thinking, okay, what? Because my reaction is, oh, that is cool. And then I start thinking, but they really want to watch it. But, you being a player and, exactly what you said before, they're not avatars. They created a tennis match that decent, I would say, in terms of movement, etc., quality. What was your reaction when you saw that?
Well, I mean, generally speaking, when I look, and I really like the AI space, especially the generative AI, it's scary, right? At least for me, it's a bit scary. And it's not only for tennis, it's actually scary for generally for our life. Like, what are we going to do in 30, 50 years? Are we going to be just, AI bots around us? What jobs will we be capable of doing? So it's generally a very, very interesting, but also very scary. I can't, I hear all these things, obviously, as everybody, ChatGPT, obviously. We are now thinking mostly about a super intelligence assistant, but the reality that also that, they're saying, I'm not an expert, but could also have a shape and form, a physical shape and form. So I don't know if we're going to see entertainment product and sport like tennis. I don't think so, and I hope not, because I think we humans have something which is fantastic, which is emotions, and I'd like to keep it that way. But so generally speaking, I don't believe that type of could replace the emotion and the entertainment value that you have two humans fighting against each other in a real arena, that type of thing. But going back to technology and innovation, if you look at what Apple has just released with the Vision Pro, Meta is going to launch the new Oculus this fall. You could argue, okay, the experience between live and remote, it's becoming very close, right? You're going to put one of those headsets next year or in a few years, getting even better, and you're going to feel almost like being there. It's going to get closer. I mean, even if you compare the remote experience today, watching in a large TV screen with 1080p or 4K, it's 10, 20, 100 times better than it used to be in the 90s in a small screen and low resolution, right? So it's becoming a lot more fun to watch, generally entertainment, but particularly sport remotely, which is good. This is, to me, is part of the opportunity, and it's part of the opportunity to actually reach more people in a wider audience, because not everyone can either afford, or there is not enough space these 2 weeks in Wimbledon to host more than the number of people that the stadium can fill. So, and we want to reach billions of people potentially. So that's very good news. But you get to ask yourself what's going to happen to all these live experiences, these big stadiums that we are building, this infrastructure that we are investing. And it's difficult to have an answer now.
Yeah. And in terms of one thing that I wanted also to ask, going a bit back to the, what you do when everything is digital and media rights can be sold in so many different ways in multiple layers. You many years ago launched Tennis TV as your own direct-to-consumer product. We have seen NFL doing NFL Game Pass in the past, NFL Plus in the US. We have seen golf. So there is a lot of experimentation there. What do you see in terms of, but maybe not only tennis? Obviously, I mean, it's a question that every event someone will ask. No, it's direct-to-consumer viable, or it's the broadcaster and whoever, the big tech should be there doing that. What do you see happening? What do you think should happen?
Again, a very challenging transition and a very difficult question, which I believe nobody has fully figured out yet. Obviously, there are some sports property that have the luxury and the freedom to be more fast and have more resources to test different options, which is kind of our struggle, because I think we've done very well on our side with Tennis TV, but obviously Tennis TV at the moment only has ATP content. We don't have the WTA, the Grand Slams, and the rest on it. So it's more difficult to test really the market on a direct consumer basis. On the other hand, everybody pretty much still relies mostly on the broadcaster side, which they do a fantastic job in distributing and telling our story. So that transition is not only an issue, how do we manage linear to OTT digital, but also, is it going to be a direct to consumer where every sport property goes direct to their fans, or is there going to be some sort of aggregation in the distribution, which is similar to Netflix, Spotify, on the lines of DAZN? I don't know the answer. I don't think nobody knows the answer. What I like is that the players, the likes of Netflix, Apple, and Amazon, the big ones who have the resources, but also who have the consumer base, are actively looking into sport, live sport, as a future for them. Because at the moment, they all have decided to get into music. Most all of them have decided to get into movies and TV series. I think the next step is going to be sport. And they're going to compete also. It's not that the traditional linear broadcaster are going to sit there and watch. I mean, we've seen the announcement of Disney with ESPN, the transition to digital for the next 5 years. So it's going to be a very interesting market for the next few years, which ultimately could be very good news for everyone, both the consumers and the right holders. So, but challenging, very, very challenging. And I don't think there is the perfect recipe today. You just have to be ready, fast to move, go left and right, and see the trends. How they wish.
I mean, the best example could be in that case, in terms of big tech, MLS and Apple deal for 10 years. Major League Soccer. That's clearly has a innovation potential because it's 10 years. It's MLS, which is pretty innovative, and it's Apple, who has a strong control on. We'll see how much innovation they will bring, because in the end, they also have to balance it with what you said before about the gaming, the familiarity. So you need, even in terms of consumption, you need to be careful not to be too disruptive, or the fans get lost. What else caught your attention in terms of innovation in other sports that you maybe are thinking, or would be curious to bring into tennis? It can be technology or anything.
I'm really fascinated at the moment by the combination of what AI can do and mixed reality. I was never been a big fan of virtual reality, in the sense that the experience that locks you out from the world is something very limited. Maybe, could be appropriate for gaming, but not for watching a live sport, which I still think can and should be a social experience, even if you are in your living room. But the idea of being capable of, having a mix, which is augmented reality and virtual reality, where you have that experience of being live, but you're also, aware of the world around you, and you see the people, and you can have this type of, I can watch the match from this angle, that angle, I can move around, and I can have different experience. It can end up to a certain extent. I don't want to say an experience that may be better than live, but you can do definitely things that you could not do live, like sitting in first row, for example, or sitting in the bench of the player, or sitting behind the umpire, or doing many, many things virtually, which today probably, I don't think the technology is quite there yet. but I'm very, very curious to see what, Oculus 3 and Apple Vision Pro will bring. But that type of experience remote with a combination of the capabilities the AI will bring, I think will enhance the experience in the next 5 years from a fan experience perspective, which is going to be incredibly. And the thing I love again is that the fact we are very, very well placed given the characteristic of our sport and the volume and the fact that we're global, etc., everything that I just said. So that really is very exciting.
And by the way, I live and am in Torino, and I know you will be coming with all your tennis player friends in my city for the finals, right?
100%. Yeah, we're looking forward to that. It's been a fantastic event the last 2 years. The city has embraced it amazingly, massive success. The players loved it, the fans love it. So definitely see you in Turin in November. 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Ciao. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao. Take care.